Hey guys, I'm Tim.
I'm Bob.
I'm Dan.
Ooh, and this is the Board Game Rundown, and today we're doing a preview of For the Crown! I don't know, I feel like it should be There's not
There's
an
no exclamation points. I think it's
there.
just for the crown.
For the Crown. In this game, this is a two-player game, and you've got these 9 decks you can choose from. They're different character classes. And so I picked Vampire. I thought vampires were awesome.
It's more of a race, but sure.
And whatever. But that's my deck. And then, Dan would pick one or Bob would pick one. And then what's going to happen is we've got 6 cards. All these decks have more than 6 cards. But you're going to have 6 cards that you start with. You are going to always have, or no, you're not always going to have, but you're going to have these cards in your hand. And then when you play it, it's in your queue. It goes to your queue. So you'd resolve it. Goes to your queue. And that's important because as you're playing cards, you're filling up your queue. When you add your 4th card to your queue, you pick up.
They all come back.
And they all come back. Now, there's going to be things that will change because depending on your class, maybe you discard a card. It doesn't go to your queue. It goes to your discard. So then there is going to be a faction that allows you to manipulate both a discard pile and your queue. There's going to be, like the vampires, for example, have a way to upgrade their cards. They got like these different marks, and if they put the marks on the different on your opponent, they then will give you an upgraded version of a card. And so now you've got an even better version of that card. And it's very straightforward. You have 10 health. Each player has 10 health, and your cards heal, they block, or they attack. So if attack hits a heal, you don't heal anything. So the attack always goes through there. Blocks, block attacks. But heals, well, if somebody blocks and I heal, well, I get to heal, and your block does nothing. And so it's a rock, paper, scissors sort of aspect to it. But there's this timing with how and when you play the cards because it is always known information. Like at any time, Dan can look at my queue, and he can also, if he doesn't want to, because what we were doing is I was just giving him the card, like the little deck list right here that's on your player aid. And but what he could also do is just say, Tim, what cards do you have in your hand? And I could be like, I have Immortal, Vanish, and Drain Blood. So now he knows
what cards you have to choose
what
from.
cards that I have to choose from. And I've got to pick one of them. And yeah, it's really interesting. I really liked the balance. I'm better with some of these characters than others. I was terrible with the Paladin, but actually was pretty effective with the Vampire until Dan figured out his deck and then got me back. Every time I went to use the Drain Blood card, which is a really good attack card, Dan had it timed perfectly. So I didn't get to pull it off. But I got it off one time. I was like, sweet. And then after that, I was like,
I don't know the name of it was, but the Warlock has a card where if I would take damage, they take it instead.
yeah.
Nice.
Yeah. It's a bad card is what it's called.
Yeah, BS card.
Yeah. But yes, all of these decks play completely different, have different aspects to what they do. Now, fundamentally, all the same: attack, block, and heal.
Right.
But how and what they do and how they manipulate other, either a discard pile or even maybe just
their bonus cards.
Because Dan, when you were playing as the Warlock, you had all these dudes you could summon.
Yeah, I'll explain the Warlock briefly at one point because it explains how deep the game can get for such a simple mechanic.
Yeah, no, that's fine. That's fine. And yeah, you just go till 10. Somebody's dead. You can heal up some of that, as you go. You can't heal more than 10. That's your max health. But your max health. And that's the game. It doesn't take that long to play. It's really intuitive and straightforward with the rules. You just do what it says on the card. I think twice maybe we checked the rules for something, but these are the rules. I mean, it's...
Wow, yeah.
And it covers everything. I didn't have any problems. There's some FAQ.
On the player aid card of your guy, there's an FAQ. Cool.
Brilliant.
Yeah.
Brilliant. Dan, why don't you tell us what you thought about For the Crown?
So this is interesting to me. This is something that I really like that is very rarely done correctly. I talk about to where it takes kind of an old classic game and it is trying to release a new version of it. So this is not exactly rock, paper, scissors. Even they kind of compare it slightly to it, but it's not exactly like you said. It's not like the shield or the heal blocks the shield. It's just
Right.
that the shield's not useful if it does it. So it just has a kind of thing because any game a shield blocks a sword, so it's like it's loosely there, right? But still, like, so we covered a game recently that was like an update of Connect 4, right? And so I'm always excited about that kind of stuff because it's like, okay, let's see, can they do it? But it's almost always disappointing, and every once in a while you get a cool one. And so like Bob and I didn't know anything about this when we went into it, and Tim said, oh, it's kind of like a rock, paper, scissors, and Bob and I went, and we kind of like looked at each other like, we're about to play rock, paper, scissors. Okay, dude. And then I sat down and played it, and I was like, ooh.
It's more like rock, paper, scissors, lizard, Spock.
Yeah. No, don't talk about that garbage. Garbage TV show.
Oh, God. There's some really interesting stuff going on here. So, again, just to explain a brief synopsis of the Warlock to explain how deep the mechanics can go. Again, he's talking about basic rock, paper, scissors stuff. But the Warlock deck has 6 extra cards. You have 3 books. They're called like Corruption or something. And you have 3 demons. Cards in my hand, some cards get discarded and some cards go to a queue. Okay? My discarded cards are gone until they get added to my queue. Like I have 1 card in my hand that says add all discarded cards to your queue, which is a way for me to, let's say I play 4 discarded cards in a row, they're more powerful usually than the queue cards because the queue cards, once you play 4, you get them back. The discard cards, you don't get that, except let's say I have 4 cards in my discard and I play a card that moves them all to my queue. They move all to my queue. I now have 4 cards in my queue. I get them all back, right? So I can control a fast forward there. At the same time, I can play a card that adds a demon to my hand. There are 3 powerful demons that do different things, or that adds a corruption to my hand. A different card adds a corruption. The corruption lets me get a card back from to my queue.
Return a card in
gets
your
back
queue.
to my hand from my queue. So that's a way to fast forward that, which remember doesn't matter a whole bunch because the Warlock can just move cards from a discard pile to his queue. So I could play that card to get a card back from my queue, setting me behind a turn, but the next turn play a card that gets me my whole queue back anyway, right? You can do that. Also, it's really interesting here because I don't fully know, the rules here. Hey, designers. That card has 6 cards in the back, and that is all public information. Once a demon is in my hand, it is no longer on the public information card.
I think you still have to, if I say what's in your hand, you could say, well, I've got a Reap, Soulfire, and a Watcher. And I'm like, okay, well, what's the Watcher do? I mean, you'd have to tell me.
I'm 100% okay with that. I'm saying I wouldn't doubt, like, if they said, no, those cards, because it's some crazy spell stuff, you don't have to say it, you just say, and a demon in my hand, I would say, sure, that makes sense too. I don't think it would be broken, is all I'm saying if that was the case.
Right.
But I'm just saying, I couldn't find the answer for that specifically anywhere. I just assumed that it was always open knowledge. So I would just tell Tim, yeah, I have the Watcher, and here's what he does. But it's just interesting because I'm adding cards to my hand that are not on the back of that card. So Tim would have to ask. Rather than just look at the card.
Right. Yeah, like, so the vampire, for example, like, has an upgraded feast. So I would need to let you know, hey, this does +7 damage if you're wounded.
Except, this is what I'm saying, except you don't have to let me know that. Because you upgrade your card when you do your marks, and then the card leaves the table and is now in your hand, so I would see that your upgraded bites is gone off the table, so I would know it's in your hand.
Right. I mean, I would let you know what it does, but
sure, yeah, the stronger version.
Right.
Sure.
Yeah.
But yeah, so you can see this very simple mechanic taken to this Warlock deck where you have 2 piles that are manipulating each other. You have 2 card sets that you're slowly adding to your hand to manipulate those piles. There's way more depth here than you may think. And they're all interestingly thematic from what I've seen. Obviously the Paladin was a lot about this like holy healing kind of stuff.
Oh my God, it was terrible.
On,
I could
right?
not get the prayer thing. And that is not a design flaw. That is a Tim flaw.
Sure.
But they all play very much on theme.
Sure.
Yeah, the Warlock with all the summoning and hurting yourself to do things, right, is very Warlock, right? So I'm having to discard cards to proc other abilities and then try to get those discards back by doing certain things. It was very thematic, and then I'll let Bob talk about the rogue when we get there. But I'll just say I was happily surprised with the amount of strategy I felt in this extremely simple card game. Again, my deck had 6 cards in it. And I found a lot of depth and interest there. So good job. I like seeing this kind of stuff. A game that is a next level game, right, is like what I call or a next step game. Okay, well, my family only plays Clue. Okay, show them this. This is this interesting, like, kind of like you're getting them used to these slightly more interesting, complicated mechanics to me personally, right? So that is what I'll say about For the Crown.
Bobby.
Yeah, so I got to check out the Rogue. I had a good time with it. Let me see that real quick. And it really felt like I was doing roguey things, right? Because like Tim was playing the Paladin, and I felt like we were kind of like dancing back and forth, until I finally hit him for 7.
Yeah. Yeah, you
and
did.
that was pretty cool.
Yeah.
It felt very roguey. But no, so like they have a bunch of potions that they keep off to the side, but then abilities that you would think you have, right? Like smokescreen and assassinate and take cover. So you're like blocking damage or doing a little bit of this damage this time and maybe a little bit of damage next time too, because you're doing these little pokes and stabs, and then you do the one big attack and you finally get to land because you have that whole thing where you're trying to read, is Tim going to block this turn?
Right.
Is he going to hit me? I don't think he's going to try to hit me yet. I'm going to try to, and you're just trying to play, game the other person and you're reading each other out which way they think they're going to go. So the whole thing when you're doing the paper, rock, scissors, like, they're going to throw paper this time?
Right.
Scissors 2 times in a row. So, yeah, it's just a really fun little game there that I enjoyed with the Rogue. So
The interesting thing I saw about Rogue is so it's the only one I've seen that can play 2 cards on a turn.
Correct.
Not
but it has to be at
time.
the right time because they do have a card, yes, that says next turn play every card in your hand.
Yeah,
But
that's crazy.
That's a potion. Yeah, and then they also have the one that says you can play 2 cards if your queue is full.
Right.
So once your queue is full, you can throw 2 cards out there.
Right. That's
and get,
very interesting. The other thing about the Rogue that I thought was pretty thematic was so you were talking about reading your opponent, trying to trick them kind of as the Rogue, right? The sneaky swashbuckling, whatever you want to call it, right? So the Rogue has a card that you play it and it does 2 damage.
Yes.
If you do damage on your next turn.
Yes. 2
right?
damage this turn and 2 damage next turn.
Yeah.
Yep.
So so then the person is sitting there, the opponent is sitting there going, okay, well, Bob is going to want to play damage because he gets that bonus 2 damage, but also that's exactly what Bob thinks that I would think.
Right. That's
so
what I was
Bob's
doing.
actually going to heal this turn or
Yeah.
something, right? Like that little mind game of just that card sitting out.
Yes, the
is
take cover worked that way. So it was block 4 damage, and then the next turn, if I don't try to deal damage, I can block
that's
4
the
damage
one
again.
I was thinking of.
So I was like,
yeah.
I'm not going to attack. I have a pre-plan block.
Yeah,
Right.
exactly. So yeah, I think they did a really cool job
Yeah,
here.
they did thematic and stuff.
Well, like in the Druid, it has a bear form card.
Nice.
When you play that, you replace your hand with bear cards for 3 turns, and then you discard them when played, right? So,
Wild
so
shape.
I'm playing, and then I go back to my hand because I turn back from a bear.
Right.
But the bear form does like a lot of
Crazy
cool
damage,
stuff.
yeah.
Crazy damage. Yeah, 6 damage, -1 for each card in your hand. Well, if you ditched your hand and you're
Right.
only playing these, you're going to do a lot of damage.
Yeah.
So just does so many interesting things. I really appreciated how the decks all feel very
so
thematic,
different.
and they all play differently. I think that you very easily, I'll use myself as an example, will be really good and have a great time with some classes, and there might be some classes where it's like, I hate that class, I don't ever want to play
I
it.
feel the same way in D&D.
And it's not really, again, it's not the class's fault.
It's just personal taste.
Personal taste. And so much like bang in this tiny little box. I
Yeah.
mean, there's 9 characters in the prototype that we have,
Right. That's crazy that all of that came in that little box.
and you could. They all play differently. They do really different, unique, fun, very cool things. This game plays very fast. This is a great entry level game. But again, playing this game with seasoned gamers,
yeah.
and we're having a good time. And again, like, I love games where you have to game the player though too.
Yes.
You know, like, oh, okay,
Yeah.
all right.
It's my favorite thing about hidden movement because you have that game against
Yeah.
the players. Yeah.
Yeah, and so I just thought this was really fun. There's no hidden information.
Right.
So, I mean, that's one of the things they say
You
in
know
the
what
rules.
my options are. What will I
Which
choose?
one am I going to do? And then again, like, I really like that queue system. So these 3 cards are out. I only have 3 to choose from, but I know that I'm going to pick them all up in a minute. But then again, other characters have different ways to bounce cards from their queue, bounce them from their discard, into their queue. Like, so they might move something from their queue to their discard, or from their discard to their queue, which then will allow them to pick up early, and there's just lots of neat mechanics in here for a game that is so easy to learn how to play. But like, it's very satisfying because it's got just that right level of crunch without overcomplicating and without really overstaying its welcome. It's pretty fast. It's fun, and can be a little intense or a little like, because it gives you moments like that because when you backstab me for like 7, I'm like,
I'm dead.
Well, all right. Because we were literally, it's
We're
like one damage,
2 damage.
yeah,
Yeah,
like
yeah.
this and that,
I
and
got
then
my 3,
I
I'm
just
pretty
played
safe.
the wrong card. You timed that perfectly, and I was
Yeah.
like done,
Yep.
and it was awesome. It was awesome. But again, it played like it felt like it should.
Right.
You know, like it was all very intuitive like that. So a big fan of this. Very excited to see. Hopefully, this game does really well because I think that there's a lot of action in this little box, and it's a really good time. Do you guys have anything else?
No, you got it. You
so,
got
yeah.
the gist. Check it out if it sounds interesting.
Yeah.
All right, guys. For the board game rundown, I've been Tim.
Bob.
Dan.
For the crown, check it out.